Hey everyone, welcome to CSE 300. My name's Chad Mitzel and I'm going to be your instructor for this semester. So, for the start of this class, I thought I would just put together a quick video that's going to show you the layout of the D2L course, kind of how I've structured all of the content, kind of go over some of the to-dos that will be on your list, as well as kind of show you some of the various accounts we're going to be using, and then eventually we'll end up with doing a quick overview of the syllabus. I'll highlight some of the important things, and then after that you can take off running with the course and just kind of, get through it at your own pace. So on your screen right now you should basically see our D2L homepage. There's not going to be a whole lot of stuff in here, but there are going to be two main important things that you should note. On your left, I have included our calendar for the course here, and I've tried to put as many important dates on the calendar as possible. So there's assignment due dates on here. There's various dates that I would like you to have some tasks completed by, things like having a proctor, creating a GitHub account, which those are all things we'll talk about in a minute. And then on the right, the bigger chunk of the screen here is I have where all of the class news is going to be dropped at. So whenever I have an announcement I want to make to the whole class, some new piece of information, I'm going to drop that here and it'll pop up at the top. And just like how D2L always does, you should get a notification that this thing happened. So the first thing that kind of pops up here is basically just a class README. So when you get to the D2L site, definitely take a look at this guy, read through him well, because it's got some important information. A couple important highlights is, first I go over all of the various accounts that we're going to be using for this course, and there's a few different ones. So for instance, for assignment distribution and collection, we're actually going to be using GitHub Classrooms. This is a nice little application that lets me share assignments with you. You can work on them and submit them via Git and GitHub. For those of you that haven't used Git or GitHub before, don't worry. I've posted a link that has some short tutorials, and then I've also got several videos that show you kind of the basics of how to use it and how it will integrate with the workflow that you're going to need to complete the assignments. I also have a link to the text that we're going to be using for this class. It's an e-text called Zybooks. You may have used this in other classes before, but you'll basically go to the website, enter this code, and then you'll be able to purchase my book. And when you log into it, you're basically going to see something like this. It's broken down into various chapters, etc., and then you'll just start going through the material. There's going to be 5 required chapters that I will actually have activities on, so you'll have to be up to date with those. But beyond that, I also have some optional chapters here as well that have supplemental information that could be helpful. So for instance, we have a chapter on pointers, and we also have a chapter on recursion. Both of these things are going to be important and very helpful to go over, especially when you're trying to dust off, your old pointer skills from CSE 250, etc. Now, I really like Zybooks because as we go into it, it's more interactive than other texts I've seen. So they have a lot of information in here. They're not very, overly verbose, and they kind of get to the point, which is nice. But as we go along, there's also various knowledge checks in here, right? So they'll ask you questions. You can do true or false questions. We'll have lots of different animations, and there's also some short answer stuff so that you can kind of see how you're doing. Now, as a feature of Zybooks, they basically keep track of how much of this stuff you've completed, and then that will tie back into kind of what I've called Zybook check-ins, where I will basically be able to look and see how many of the chapters you've completed, and then there's so many points associated with each one. We'll take a look at how those actually work in a minute and the point values associated with them, but just know there are required chapters and sections that I expect you to go over and do all of the activities in, right? But those are listed out in our assignments section. Okay, so that's the Zybook. You'll just kind of go through it and keep going to each section, etc., etc. It's very good. Would highly recommend digging into that one. Also, on top of that, in order to foster better communications and interactions between everybody, I've also set up a class Slack. So in order to join the Slack channel, all you have to do is click on this link. It'll send you to a login page, and then you can add yourself to the Slack channel. Please use first name _ last name as your username on there, because it just makes life a lot easier for me, so I know who I'm talking to. I've also listed out some of the tools that we're going to be using for the course. For this specific class, I let you basically use whatever development environment you want. If you're on Windows, that's fine, Linux, Mac, any compiler you want, etc. Now there's one caveat with this, with that caveat being everything that you program in this class is going to have to compile on a Linux machine that I'm providing you. Now this is important because different compilers can handle different situations differently. Right, so you could write a piece of code and compile it on Windows. You could then take that same piece of code, compile it on Linux, and it's going to behave differently, just depending on what you were trying to do, what sort of special features you were using, etc. So in order to kind of avoid some of these strange situations, I have built a baseline VM that you can pull down from this link. This is the same VM that I'm going to be using when I'm grading, so whatever you see, I'm going to see. Alright, so we're kind of starting off at a good baseline for everybody. If you want to, you can download this VM and you can do all of your homework on it. That's fine. You can do your homework on your regular machine and then transfer it to your VM. That's fine too. Just know that before you give me your final submission, you should have at least built it in this VM to make sure that's working appropriately. Also, I just give a couple text editor recommendations. So I really like Visual Studio Code. It's a very flexible, very handy editor that does all sorts of cool things for you. Lots of really neat plugins. Sublime Text 3 is also a great editor. Or if you're a command line junkie, Vim's great as well. Then I also just have a couple notes on communications for any official communication between us. Say you have some questions or you have grading issues you want to work out, please send an email to my DSU account. Do not send anything to D2L. I'll never see it, so don't do that. If you are sending me an email, please put CSC300 in square braces in the subject line. That lets me filter for your email, so it's much easier for me to find it. But by and large, I would like to use Slack for communications between everybody. It's very fast, it's flexible, it has a few nice features for sharing files and code snippets, etc. Right? So whenever that's possible, let's use that. But again, any questions relating to grades or any sort of sensitive stuff should be kept over email, right? Over the official DSU channels. As far as response times go, I do have a full-time 9-to-5 job. So usually between 9 and 5 p.m. Eastern time, I'm not going to be readily available, but outside of that, I am very good at responding to emails and Slack messages, etc. Right? So you can usually expect a response within 24 hours. Right? So that's the home page. As far as actual content for the class goes, everything you're going to need to find is basically under the content tab. And I've basically broken down the entire class into various weeks, with the exceptions of the getting started section that just has a couple quick links like the syllabus, the class VM, its credentials, etc., and the assignments section. Now, this is a little bit special because I basically put links to all of our class assignments here. So we have assignments A1 through A4. These are actual coding assignments, and I've got their associated due dates as well. And then I also have the due dates for the various zybook checkups that I mentioned before. If you click on the checkup, I have a list of all of the sections that I expect you to have completed by the due date. Right, so just make sure to go through those and everything will be fine. As far as the actual coding assignments go, is whenever you click on one of these assignment links, it's going to take you to GitHub Classrooms. And in order to get the assignment, all you need to do is click accept this assignment. So when you click accept, it will go out, more or less fork the assignment from my repositories and create a new one for you. You can then access it just like you would anything on GitHub, and it's shared only between you and me. It's not a public it's a private repo, so no one else will see it, and only the two of us will be able to see what's going on in there. This lets us do lots of really cool things. I can check up on how you've been doing. If you have raw questions about your code, you can submit it right into GitHub, and then I can log in and see what's been going on, what you've been changing, and I can see your whole project instead of just maybe sharing one or two snippets of code via email, right? Because sometimes some of the context that code is in really matters. So this makes assignment sharing between us very simple, and it also allows for very easy submission. All you have to do is commit the final version of your code before the due date. Right? That's it. There's no, copying everything into a zip file and then uploading it to D2L and then, oh shoot, I forgot that was the wrong file, so I need to upload another copy and all that jazz. This just makes it very, very simple. So just click on the link, click accept the assignment, and that's really all we have to do there. So if we go back to the content, right, again, I broke everything up by weeks. So in each of these weeks, I basically have the videos I expect you to watch, and then I have any associated content that comes along with those videos. So there might be code examples in here, there might be slide decks, there might be links to other online resources that I think are helpful. But this could be a smorgasbord down here about what's going on. But I just have broken everything up. Most of these week's videos, there's usually between an hour and a half and 3 hours of videos, just depending on what we're talking about. But I tried to keep it around the hour and a half mark or so, somewhere in there. So there's not a ton of videos, but it's very important that you watch all of them. Okay, so really that's all of the content special things. One thing to note is when the midterm and final come up, they will pop up as links in the assignments tab, but you'll get notifications that those are released and ready to go. The other thing I think I have in here, at least in week 1 and week 2, is I have these lists of chores that I expect you to complete by a given date, right? So I expect you to create a GitHub account, I expect you to sign up for the Slack channel, get the class VM, purchase the iBook, and have that all done in the first week, right? Same for week 2, right? In week 2, my main thing that you need to have done is to submit your proctoring info, right? Per DSU and state policy, all exams have to be proctored now, so you will have to figure that out and submit your proctoring info to DSU, who will then forward me an email to which I can accept or reject, right? Just depending on what the situation is. So don't forget to take care of those things. Beyond that, we can just kind of go over the highlights of the syllabus here. It's mostly standard stuff, but just a few things to make sure everyone's aware of. So the last day to drop and still receive 100% refund from the class is September 5th. The last day to withdraw is November 8th. This is an online-only class. I don't have office hours as this is a digital-only meeting space, but I will be available, most of the time quite readily between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Typically, I'm available outside of that as well, but, that can be more hit or miss. Just send me an email, Slack message, and I will respond to it. The official prereq for this class is CSC 250. The required text is the iBook. Again, here is the code that you need to sign into it. Any other required materials will just be provided to you via D2L. As far as course delivery goes, it's just all in the content section of D2L, and you may complete it at your discretion, right, or at your own pace. But by that, I would hope you would at least be keeping up with the week to week. If you want to work ahead, that's fine as well, but just don't get behind. If you start getting behind, things are going to become much harder for you in the second part of the class. Right, we do the first half of the class is a lot of basic knowledge building, and then the second half we begin using those basic building blocks that we created in the first half to create some much more advanced data structures. So keep up with that. If you have any accessibility or ADA requirements, please get a hold to DSU and let them know via these links. They will then send me any official requirements that you need, and make me aware so that I can provide them to you. Again, we have our basic academic honesty statement here. Long story short, don't cheat. If I suspect you of cheating, you'll be put into the official academic integrity proceedings, and you will receive a 0 on that assignment. Right, so we have various possible forms of cheating listed here: copying code from another student, refactoring code from another student, blatant copying from a website, etc. Right, so just please don't do that. Right, this class is here, and the challenges that I give you are basically done to make you as good as possible. Right, but there are other things that aren't academic dishonesty or cheating. Getting help from me, getting help from tutors, trying to learn the basics from some other external resource, etc. The big thing I just ask you not to do is to blatantly copy, right? That's the most important thing. If you put in the work, you'll be able to handle this class. Other than that, again, my preferred, ways of contact is via my DSU email and Slack, 24-hour response time, typically. As far as examinations go, again, Proctor is going to be required for the final and midterm. And then here I basically have the weights for how grading in the class is going to go. All of the assignments are worth 50%, the midterms 20%, finals 20%, and then those Zybook activities I described to you are 10%. Right, and then here is basically what my grading scale is going to look like. Again, your grade is not necessarily rounded, right? So take that for what it's worth. And then at the bottom, basically, I have the tentative course outline and topics that we'll cover, right? So we'll do some C++ intro stuff. We'll go into linked lists. I'll tell you a little bit more about compiling and linking. We'll go over assignment 1, stacks, queues, sorting, etc. And then we'll start getting into some more advanced stuff, such as binary search trees, red-black trees, and then eventually we'll end up getting into graphs, right? So that right there is pretty much the highlights of the syllabus. Again, do go through it. Make sure you're aware of everything that's in there. And then, you can go through the course content and just start running with it. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we'll catch you in the next video.